Hey, APU sister students, this is Dustin Baker again. Hope you're doing well. This is Baker's Backyard. We're going to focus our attention on another writing type today as we start to look at a second form of SAQ known as the SAQ that is centered around a secondary resource or a source. And so we're going to learn today, first of all, what in the world does that mean? Second of all, how do we tackle this question with effective analysis? And we're going to look at a sample of what this question will also look like. So let's go ahead and get started. So a lot of students like to ask the question, what is an SAQ? Well, think about what we've learned before. An SAQ is basically a shorter essay that you will basically have limited space and time to actually create a response to. Now, what differentiates this from the previous ones that we did is that if you remember, the previous ones that we did were simply 3 parts, A, B, and C. There was no stimulus. There was no reading to it. It simply gave you 3 tasks to do associated with a time period, and bang, 12 or whatever the number of minutes later is, you basically use evidence, reasoning, the ACE method, which will again use with this one, guys. What this one does is that this is one, first of all, that all students must complete. There is no selection of this kind like the one that we did previously, okay? And so what is basically this required you to do? Well, first of all, you need to be able to analyze and break down historical claims that are made by historians. These people that are basically making their living off of not just studying history, but in many cases writing about it, thinking about it, and of course, analyzing it in a way that is unique to their own scholarship, okay? So what that means is that you're gonna have to read over 2 excerpts or passages, one from 2 different historians, and you're going to basically have to, first of all, see what similarities and differences are there. That requires you to look a lot of times at comparison and contrast. And the other thing, guys, is that many of these questions, as we'll see here in a second, are going to require you to use your own understanding of outside evidence. In other words, things that you know about the time period that can show additional support for an argument that a historian is making in each passage, okay? And so take a look at what we're looking at here. Requires a comparison of arguments, pieces of evidence to support one or both claims, okay? So what you're gonna see here is a very common question where it might say, state the main thesis of this author, the second part of it, or B would say about this author, and then the third piece, guys, or C might say, you know, pick one of the 2 passages and using historical evidence, prove why their argument is correct or basically makes sense or whatever, okay? So you want to be able to know something. Again, it's a short essay response, which basically means that you're writing this in a short amount of space, but that you have 3 separate tasks to do. So you want to be in a position, ladies and gentlemen, to, of course, organize your work A, B, and C, but address the tasks the right way. All right. This is an SAQ, like I said, that all students must complete on the exam. And remember, all 3 of these SAQs combined equals 20%. So this is approximately, guys, a little bit less than 7% of your exam score. So it can really help you. So what does an SAQ look like before we talk about how to actually tackle answering it? Well, this one came from the 2019 exam. As you can see, this deals with time period 3, okay? And so what you're looking at is you're looking at 2 different historians that have written on this topic, something related to the American Revolution. So guys, remember, when you get a prompt, you always want to take time to break down what is it really asking you. Now, some of you might be like, well, Mr. Baker, that's easy. It is suggested that you annotate as you read the prompt. Because look at what we would read. First of all, briefly describe one main difference between Crane's and Zagari's historical interpretations of the immediate impact of the revolution on women. Okay? So simply stating, she thought this and she thought this without bringing comparison into it, or I'm sorry, differences, is most likely going to be an incomplete answer. But remember, limited space and also limited time, okay? Briefly explain how one event, development, or circumstance from the period 1765 to 1800, that is what? Not explicitly mentioned in the excerpt, can be used to support Crane's argument. So you got to be able to understand Crane's argument there, but you also have to be able to bring understanding as you have with your understanding of evidence that is not right there. And keep in mind, these are not lengthy passages. Okay, so you're most likely going to get something that is maybe a big picture statement, something that you can look at a little bit more, but you're going to have to also show this reader or whoever's looking at your work, as your teacher, somebody who's exploring it, what you know to support the argument that that historian is making. Now, it's the same basic thing with letter C. The difference here is that you're basically using evidence to show that you understand Zagari's argument. Okay? And so that's important to keep in mind. Okay? So what's the best way to go about tackling this kind of question? This is pretty quick, and then we'll look at a sample from time period 2, actually. Read both excerpts, focusing on the following as you read. So again, annotating. Clarify the general topic that both historians write about. Now you're like, okay, well, they're going to talk about women during the Revolution. Okay, that's true. What do they specifically say about it? Look at the next thing. This is where you're breaking down similarities and differences. So guys, if you already have in the front of your minds, okay, these passages are going to be dealing with pretty much the same time period or theme, you can also understand that these historians are going to be looking at it perhaps from a different set of lenses, just like you and I would if we were observing an event. Okay? And you want to be able, as you read, to break down what is in that document, but also what stands out. So a quick summary with evidence from that document is important. Okay? So then what do? Well, the ACE method. Answer the question. Cite your evidence and explain. Okay? And so again, you've compared and contrasted or showed differences with the two interpretations. But when you're getting into evidence, guys, check out here, cite evidence from the passage to prove a claim. Those historians are both making claims about women during this revolution. What you want to do is you want to show that claim, which they have already made, and you want to be able to use your own evidence to basically support the claim. Okay? So if you're showing this is a difference between, let's say, Zagari and the other author, then the evidence for letter A is going to be they have differences along these lines, and you're using specifics from the document to drive your understanding of that claim. Okay? What you're doing for letter B and C in the previous examples case, guys, is that you're using your evidence to show how it would support the claim of the historian. Okay? So you have to bring that back to the nature of that. Okay? Think about the context. A lot of students are like, where do I get started? Well, think about context. Okay? Think about things that allow you to have a really good understanding of the theme of that work to the time period that it deals with. Again, to reiterate, broken record time. Every single one of those excerpts from historians are going to be dealing with the same time period. So what is the difference? The interpretation that that historian has. Okay? Very important to keep in the back of your minds or the front of your mind. Okay? So secondary SAQs will require the writer to use evidence outside the documents. Again, it's another way to show you and to show that you can effectively make a connection to the historian arguments. Okay? So on Canvas, for those of you that are in my class, I have posted a sample that we're going to work through together. All right, so if you're watching the video, you can pause it, take about 15 minutes to write, and then I'm going to walk you through basically some of the information that they would have looked for, Okay, these are meant to be very quick reads, guys. So therefore, I mean, your reader is probably going to be able to read your essay, your short answer in probably 20, 30, 40 seconds. So they are quick. Okay. These two are a little bit longer than the previous example, but again, very similar. Briefly explain one major difference between Hall's and Miller and Johnson's interpretation. Okay, a Puritan influence in New England. Again, they're writing about the exact same time period. Okay, briefly explain how one specific historical event or development during the period 1620 to 1750. So what is this? Time period 2. But keep in mind, this is a lengthy period of time within that time period. Okay? So there's a lot of different ways that you can address that within that spectrum of time. Letter C, not to beat this like a dead horse, guys, but again, they want you to take Miller and Johnson's interpretation and bring a piece of evidence into it that you could personally use. I want you to pause the video. You can leave this on. There's also a copy of this under Canvas under week 5. Take about 15 minutes to brainstorm. When you get better at this, guys, you're going to be able to take about 12. And when you are done, again, one front side of paper, and organize your work A, B, and C. Okay? When you are finished, you will basically hit the play again, and you'll see me going through the actual scoring rubric. Okay. Okay, U.S. history students, did you have the opportunity to look through and basically write your answer? Hopefully you did. Okay, now the scoring guide is not that much different than the one that we did with the other kind of question. Okay, again, you're getting 3 points potentially for this answer, 1 for A, 1 for B, 1 for C. Okay, but guys, I mean, this is, again, a very, very, very quick read for your score. Okay, so therefore, limited space, but importance, interpretation, going into some detail with the time that you have in the space. Okay, so what would they have been looking for the first thing about differences? Guys, take a look. It says, while Hall explained the Puritan leaders struggled to have an influence over colonists because of colonists had more interest in economic success than religion. Okay, so that's the core argument. Miller and Johnson explained the Puritan leaders were losing political power due to the rise of democratic ideas. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, okay, why is that important? Because remember, you're moving, guys, the entire question allows you to look at that broad spectrum from 1620 to 1750. Okay, so you're looking at, yeah, the Puritan influence, but you're also looking, guys, even though the 1750s, the Puritans are still around, what's the one thing that we're noticing? We're noticing other ideas coming from places like, Europe with the Enlightenment. Ergo, what do we notice? Hall's argument would basically include what? The First Great Awakening, 1730s and 40s, down the line. Okay? John Winthrop's desire to create a, quote, city upon a hill. Boston. Shipping industry in Massachusetts Bay. Okay, so we're seeing economic development that could be a complement to your answer. Okay, so that would be anything that you could associate with Hall. Now, what about Johnson and Miller? Okay, emergence in the Enlightenment. Again, ideas that define people's views on politics. You know, the idea of reason. You could even look at that in connection to obviously the some of the effects it had even on pastors and religious figures. John Locke's theory of natural rights, the idea of how that is developing, guys. And then they also suggest that you could even look at separation of church and state. Now, keep in mind is that there was technically a separation of church and state in Puritan New England, even though you notice you know, a lot of emphasis on the church. You know, some people would say it's a quasi-theocracy. But remember, you know, one of the details we looked at in one of our content sessions was that the laws in the society forbade, you know, the clergy, right? In other words, the pastors and ministers, etc., from holding these offices. Now, some of you might be like, well, that was kind of to make sure that they focused on their religion and their role in society as pastors. While that is true, technically there's still a case to be made that that does create a type of separation of church and state. Okay. If you take a look here, you'll notice, again, themes related to geography. Okay. Objectives come from Unit 2, Topic 2.3, 2.7. Okay. You're noticing, guys, skills and reasoning, claims and evidence, and also, as you can see, comparison. Okay. So all of those skills, using evidence, using your historical thinking, okay, the content that you've studied, the list goes on and on, guys, are all very, very closely assessed in that small part of the exam, yet important part of the exam. I hope this has been helpful. For those of you that want to see these guidelines, they are posted on Canvas. For those of you in my class, feel free to ask questions. As always, guys, bakerd@franklineconomy.org is my my email. But this is the second kind of major SAQ we're going to do. The next one that we'll look at in one of our next sessions will be the one that covers primary sources that are mostly visual based. So things like political cartoons, pictures, visuals that deal with like evidence that you can see that's numeric, okay, charts, graphs, etc. So stay tuned to that. As always, guys, I hope you are staying safe, and I hope you're doing well, and take care. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.